Welcome to the TOCA Backstage podcast. Join TOCA's Executive Director, Chris Wolf, in conversations with the artists and people behind the scenes of the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation's performances and events.
Hi, this is Chris Wolf, the Executive Director of the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation. It was my extreme pleasure to speak with Brenda Way, the Artistic Director and founder of ODC Dance in San Francisco. Brenda is an amazing talent, has choreographed over 85 pieces, multi-award-winning choreographer, and pretty much an expert on the art form of dance. Take a listen. No matter what you think of dance, whether you go to it to theater or watch it or just do it socially, she has a lot to say about the art form, and I think you'll enjoy this conversation. So take a listen to my conversation with Brenda Way. And we're back with TOCA Backstage. I am honored to have Brenda Way, I guess she's the founder of ODC Dance.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually personally had the opportunity to present you guys a million years ago when I was in the city of Brea in a small 199 seat
I
house.
remember that well.
It was an
a
amazing
small house.
Yeah,
nice.
it was truly amazing because it was like the dancers were right there with you, and it was just you guys were so gracious to fit me into your schedule. Now, for somebody who, as I like to say, I appreciate dance, but I don't always understand it. What would you say is the easiest way for people who may be in my boat to sort of go into dance, to try to grasp it better?
You know, I think sometimes I say to people, it's a little bit like going to a foreign country. You don't quite know what you're seeing, but you enjoy the things that you didn't expect. The funny architecture, why do they have those pointy roofs? And you don't really expect yourself to have an answer to that, but you do enjoy noticing it. And I think that's a good way to go in as an explorer. But I will say, I think right now things are really changing, and I think dance is becoming a language that people are using. I see so many TikToks, Instagrams, Zoom dance. I mean, everybody is dancing. I think they're feeling their bodies are isolated and they don't want them to be. They want to express, they want to touch, they want to grab on. So I think we may be talking about a new era in terms of how people approach the dance form.
But that would be lovely. I'm wondering too if you think maybe some of the television shows had anything to do with that.
Well, I think they do too, but I think the actual need to physicalize something is being felt in such a profound way now that maybe never has in our lifetimes.
And what would you say to people who are like, well, I like to dance, I like to go out social dancing, I like the ballroom or whatever, but why would I want to go watch them?
Well, I guess you might say you like to play basketball, but why do you watch the game? But really, because seeing something done fabulously is always invigorating. You do your best, you boogie down, but when you see someone, they really flip into amazing things with partners in love or hostility, whatever the emotion is, it takes you to a different level. And I think, I actually think the more people are dancing, that's what I think, the more they're dancing, the more they can relate to the people dancing. I think the idea that you have to get the story or the meaning can take a back seat a little bit to the visceral joy of moving and seeing somebody move beautifully.
And I sort of liken it also to going to a museum where you don't, you go and look at the paintings and the images, and everybody gets something. There'll be like maybe 10 pictures you don't get anything out of, but then there's that one where you just go, oh my God.
I think that's absolutely right. I know that I'm a big fan of the written word. Actually, I'm a major reader. But when I go to a concert, I am struck by the moments. How did they do that? That was incredible. And there's something about the extraordinary capacity of a human being in a moment that's not unlike seeing that painting that does it for you. And you've walked down the halls, your feet are sore, the floor is marble. And then suddenly it happens to you. You see a painting that just bowls you over. And I think it's the same way with moves. You don't have to love the whole thing. You can be there, you can be enjoying it, and let that moment happen to you. And I think it does. People tell me, what about that move where he had his leg out and she jumped over the top? They remember some moment. It was like the catch in in a baseball game. And right. I think those are important reasons and ways that people can get into the form.
Now, you've choreographed
millions of pieces.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say 85 because that's what I had on the bio for you. But when you choreograph a work, do you step into it thinking this is what I want to impart to people, or how do you approach it?
I think I don't ever think that I would be a writer in that case if I wanted to tell you something. I think I have some questions that I ask. What would it feel like if we never left the floor in this piece, or if we never came down for more than a second then to spring off? And then I actually find the metaphor of meaning often, not always true, after the piece begins to take shape. I realize that it's about the ephemeral nature of love, or so. Do you know what I mean? I see something in what's happening on the floor, and not necessarily what I had in mind. I don't think I'm very programmatic, though. In recent years, when the political exigencies of our world have sort of pressed down, I have done some more asking questions around issues. Not how I'm going to tell you how to feel about it, but when I did a piece, let's take an early one on, I think it was, I don't know how long ago it was, but it was on global warming. But the idea I had was that I would have 10 blocks of ice hanging over the stage. We'd just be going on normally in our dancing life, and the water would continue to drip down because the stage. So by the time I was done with that piece, I had in my mind, oh, that woman, she's Cassandra. And the rest of them are not paying attention. Now, this was a long time ago, this piece. I wish I had it up today. But in other words, the meaning accumulates from the idea of what questions I'm asking. So that means there's lots of room for the audience to come up with a particular story. But the question I'm asking may direct you. If you see water dropping down the stage, you might get an idea that I'm thinking about ice melting. Right. You wouldn't need a program note for that.
I'm really curious as far as like the marriage of music and dance, because I remember as a child, choreographing a routine to like a Beatles song in my house. And it was like, I had the music and then I was like playing around. But for somebody who has, like you say, you have a feeling or you want to impart something, or maybe not, just you have
an idea, just say idea.
Yeah, just an idea. How do you find the music to go with that?
Well, I would say that the music also comes along. My strategy is usually the following. I come up with the question I want to ask, physically or intellectually or emotionally. And then I'll bring in 10 or 15 CDs, and I'll do the different things that we're doing to the different music. At some point, something will resonate. And I say, oh, we're going to go here. Of course, this is different if I'm having a piece written for it. And I have lots of pieces where I have composers work with me. But it's the same kind of slightly a disconnected process, and I see how they marry. An interesting thing happens when you use a recorded piece of music. Well, also with the commission. They'll work separately, or the music will be written. I'll be working separately. When I put it together, the relationship often highlights transitions that I didn't think were important. So just by chance. So the music crescendos at a certain point, and I wasn't thinking of a crescendo there, but suddenly you see that little subtle piece of movement as very important. So there's a wonderful collaborative thing that goes on. And I love the fact that you don't know where that's going to be. You don't know what the music is going to give you or focus your eye or excite you about the dance until you put them together. It's a little bit the electricity of a blind date.
I have to say that's so interesting, because I always, for a novice and somebody who knows really nothing about dance, I always thought it was like, oh, here's a piece of music that tells a story or shares an idea that I have, and this is how I'm going to put it together.
Yeah.
But
I don't do that. I think some people do dance to the music.
Right.
I think Mark Morris, for instance, choreographs. He knows the music very well. He reads the sheet music. I think he choreographs to it. I'm more interested in the felicity of and the chemistry of what happens when they come together. And then I'll adjust a little. If it's a commission, he will adjust or she will adjust their music a little too. I might say, oh, this doesn't work well here, so stretch it out. Take much longer doing this passage so that you don't get to the high point until they do. But basically, I think the thrill, after you've been choreographing for 50 years, I mean, you're looking for a few thrills. It comes with that, the felicity of the relationship.
And another question I have is trying to explain dance to somebody who doesn't know it, like, or even in a season brochure.
Yeah.
You have modern, tap, hip hop, ballet, ballroom, whatever.
Salsa.
Yeah.
Afro-Cuban, yes.
How are we supposed to tell people what
to expect?
Yeah, it's like,
I think it's hard. I mean, we talk about our company being classically trained and with a contemporary sensibility. I mean, I think actually when I'm just talking to people, I say, well, we're classically trained, but I was playing baseball at the age of 5. So just put those together. Because I think so there's kind of a visceral presence in the muscles. Sports are a big thing, I think, that affected my interest in physicality. But I was in ballet when I was 3. So it makes sense that those two things kind of wove together.
Yeah. But again, it's
people understand both ballet and they understand sports. So those are good reference points. You know, whether they actually get an idea of what they're going to see, that's hard to say. And one good thing these days, though, is you can say, check them out on the web.
Yeah.
Get yourself a preview.
Yeah. Because I always, it's like if I tell my wife, I said, okay, well, we're going to go check out this dance company to see if I want to book them. And she goes, what kind of dance is it? And I said,
do I have to?
Yeah, there's that too. But it's like, oh, it's a modern dance company. Oh, or it's a tap company. Oh, okay. Well, then
you get
that I understand. Ballet, I understand. Modern.
Well, it's so big. Modern it's just too big of a term to have any meaning, except that people do think of early modern dance. That is, it is off-putting, I think, for many people because it's a little bit earnest.
Well, yeah, but I think you're right. I think they just don't understand what they're going to see. And some are just blow you out of the water. And then there's some not so much. And it's weird because you can have 2 different dance companies, maybe of the same caliber, or, they think they are.
Or
and then you go see them, and one you walk away with, oh my God, that was amazing. And one you walk away with, I just don't get it.
Yeah. Well, that's true with piece of music too, right? I mean, even in somebody's work that you love, you can say, Alexa, next.
Yeah, right.
Right? I mean, that's the nature of the art. Oh, there goes my phone. Sorry.
That's okay.
But I think that it's like with people, there's chemistry. Some things just speak to you and some things don't. And I think, we don't stop meeting people because everybody doesn't turn out to be our heart's desire.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, I mean, again, I've seen your work, and to me, it's blown me away. There's a couple of groups that I've been introduced to that I really, really enjoy. And then and even some of the big companies, I watch their stuff and I can appreciate it, but it's like, it doesn't it doesn't resonate with me. It's like Alvin, Ailey, beautiful company, amazing group. I was like, okay, that's good, but I didn't get anything from it.
I totally feel that way. And my goal to myself is always come away with some gem, no matter how you feel about the whole. I just want to say, so that I'm looking. I said to my husband sometimes I think I'm a garbage picker. I just find the little thing that I like. But for me, for instance, I'm not wild about work that is heavily presentational, that says love me, love me, love me. That kind of makes me back off. Now, some people love that, and it's a taste. Alan Ailey often sells it, and so if that's not your inclination, it's not as powerful to you. A more subtle thing is moves me more. I like work that makes me want to lean in.
Yeah.
And that's what moved me. I also like physically dynamic work, which certainly is Ailey, but I like a physical dynamism that comes somehow that has some real people in it. And that was when I left ballet, when I thought, oh, these people don't seem real to me. And I wanted to do fantastic dancing that seemed like real people were doing it. So that's what I respond to.
Well, and I guess that's, to me, that's speaks to the arts in general, is that an artist, whether it's a dancer, singer, actor, whatever, has to have a sense of authenticity.
Yeah.
And when they're on stage dancing, if it's coming from an authentic place, then it's people buy into it. Whereas opposed to if it's just like, okay, I'm doing, dance step,
Steps.
yeah, then it doesn't really mean anything.
Well, there's all sorts of things. Like, I think if you have a dramatic part in a piece that sometimes I feel it's not earned. How did you get to that? I don't believe that guy would do that, or that woman would do that. So there's a kind of a narrative that has to be persuasive to me, and then I can go. And some people don't need that. I mean, some people just, the beauty of seeing capability on the stage, prowess, it's enough.
Yeah.
The good news is there are lots of things out there and lots of different people seeing them. I think it is hard at a time when we don't have dance in the schools. We don't have a generation that's raised looking at this form, which has lots of abstraction in it, and it's not our comfort place these days, I'd say. So that's a challenge. But I think, honestly, we may be at a moment of change.
Well, I'm hoping. I mean, it's the arts and schools in general have been cut so drastically. It's like,
I know, it's terrible.
Yeah. So one of the things the foundation does, besides do presentations, is we like to mentor and encourage young and upcoming artists. We have a number of different things that we do to help mentor and I guess encourage. What words of wisdom would you impart to a young dancer who's like, I really want to go out there and be a dancer?
Well, I also mentor lots of people, and we have several programs, so we have a lot in common. That several programs that help people move along in their career. And one of the things that I have is I have a program that we call the Sandbox that assigns two choreographers or two artists to an up-and-coming dance maker. And they just give them feedback, and feedback is really important. And if you have a small group of people who you trust, that can make a big difference in how you develop. So for one thing, you need to develop some tough skin. You need to be able to hear, this is really too long, and not feel, but it was my favorite part. No, throw away your darlings, as we say.
Yes.
So that's one thing. I would say my main advice is make work. Do it in your kitchen. Do it with 5 people at the church basement. Just do it, because that you'll really find out how deep your appetite runs, and that is the whole thing. I mean, when I think of, we're going on 50 years now. There were times when, I had our money in a paper bag, and but I liked doing it, so I didn't stop. So I say, carry on, stay in the room.
Yeah, I'm curious. To me, it's like for musicians, it's easy. You get an instrument, you learn the instrument, you play it, and you're making your art. For a dancer who may have an idea for like a larger group,
Like 20 people? Yeah.
yeah, how that seems a little more like creating a production, which isn't like something you can do in your basement. How would
But
somebody go?
at the beginning, I did pieces outside. I got my friends, and we would go in a parking lot or out in a field. I mean, you have to figure out a way to do that. If your idea is that you want to work with the capacity that looks like the New York City Ballet, it's probably not going to happen in the first, 2 months of your desire. But I think you have to learn your craft. And the only way you do that is by trying. And, people ask their friends from technique class to join them. I see it all the time. In our school at the moment, we have about 2,000 students a week. So people are always saying, oh, I'm going to go ask that person if they would like to work with me. And they do. And it's on a volunteer basis. It's definitely young people working with young people, but I think that's a good way to go.
Oh,
For
sure.
one thing, it doesn't establish an expectation that you'll be better than you can be. And I think that's an important thing too. Don't get too big too fast, because you got to learn.
Now, I'm curious, because you mentioned earlier about how you played sports and you danced starting at age 3. What was your journey like? I mean, because you're from New York, right? Or is that
I'm
just where
from
you went?
Connecticut. Yeah, but I studied in New York. I mean, my first classes were with my mom, who was a dancer. That's why I could start when I was 3. It's a babysitting situation. But by the time I was 8, I was commuting into New York to study at the School of American Ballet. Those were the days when you would let your 8-year-old get on the train and go into New York. Those days are over. Anyway, and then when I went away to school as a junior in high school, and at the school I went to in Northfield, they had a modern dance program. So then I kind of understood what it meant to invent your own language, because of course I had been dealing in a received language all those years of ballet, and that was exciting to me. So after that, then I kind of kept them both going. That's a short story.
But how did you end up in San Francisco?
Well, okay, so then after I went to Oberlin College, and then I moved to New York. And when I was in New York, I got a job at Oberlin as a sabbatical replacement. So I went back to Oberlin and started the company at Oberlin. So that was the genesis of ODC. They had fabulous spaces and a lot of support from me as a faculty member, and a lot of talented students who were very smart. And in those days, I didn't really much care about technique. I had given up, the way you do at different parts in your life. I thought ballet technique was just so 5 minutes ago, and we need to be much more down to earth, and it was a postmodern sensibility. And then I had gone through a divorce when I was at Oberlin, and the guy I was interested in lived in San Francisco. This is the story I don't usually tell, right? I like to think it's all me, but it wasn't. So on my sabbatical, I moved out here, and that was that. That was great. It was also time to get away from a very small town. I mean, Oberlin was fantastic, and I worked with a lot of composers there at the conservatory. I learned an enormous amount. I learned more than I taught, I'd say. But I was ready for a bigger city, and San Francisco was the one.
And is ODC an acronym for something, or?
Oberlin Dance Company.
Ah.
It is. It actually was Oberlin Dance Collective. We were from the 60s. It evolved, but actually it evolved. But I would say that the whole spirit of the company still has a lot of those collective roots apparent. I think there's a lot of collaboration at various levels that doesn't necessarily exist in, say, an Alvin Ailey company.
And do you, as a presenter, I go to all the conferences, and there's an enormous amount of dance companies out there. Do you think it's an overcrowded field at this point?
I don't think there's ever such a thing as overcrowded field, because I think the more seed you sow, the more grows. I think it makes it hard to find what you like. I mean, I think, there's a lot of noise, but, you could say the same thing about science. Are we having too many things investigated? No. Just give us one vaccine, okay? But they're trying all over the place. I think that in general, the more the merrier. And it's one of the reasons we have a lot of mentoring programs. And most of them don't show initial promise particularly, but some of those will find it. But you got to have a lot to start with, I think.
Yeah.
And you don't know at the beginning, a young company, you don't know who's really going to find an amazing voice. Sometimes you do, but not regularly, I think.
Well, it's just it's interesting to see that there are so many creators of dance, and it's like every now and again I try to present it, and I always get
You get pushback.
I do, and it's like I understand it kind of, but I don't. It's like you got to keep. It's like you can't just present a dance company and say, okay, well, it didn't work, I'm not going to do it anymore. You got to keep trying, or at least have some sort of consistency in your programming. But I don't know, it's always tough for me, because like I said, I like to present it. I just don't. It's hard to find that audience.
I do think that that's one of the reasons we are pretty serious about community activities around presentation, because I do think when we create with the community, or whatever the outreach activity is, and we try to focus it on creativity rather than technique, because that actually helps people see other things too, not just us. Right. I mean, I think it's kind of a long-range educational strategy. I also think there are things that we can do for our audiences through the internet. I have the same challenge, incidentally, because we have a theater and we present, 6-8 things a year that's our total presents, and others are co-presents. And San Francisco, they're not rushing to see things the way they did when I lived in New York. So we have the same deal. How do you cultivate the curiosity and the appetite for trying something that they don't know what it's going to be? So we're all struggling with that one, I think.
Well, and I think part of it was so funny, because somebody was asking me just the other day, out of this whole COVID thing, what do I think is there a bright spot? And I was like, my bright spot is I'm hoping that people get so sick of looking at their screens that they're going to want to go out and connect with people and see things live again.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, as you know, when you see something like, oh my God, that really is a different thing. Even with music, which people think is going to be more the same. So I hope that is one of the upsides. And I do think people will want to be together again. Of course, the real question is, when will that happen?
Yeah.
I mean, the appetite will be there, but the fear will be too, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Well, no, that's very true. Well, we just got to keep hoping, and
we got to keep going.
I see light at the end of the tunnel. I just don't know how long the tunnel is.
Well, I think that's how we all feel. And, we're all trying to make plans.
Yeah.
Plan next season. Should we plan to have one in every 5 seats? I mean, it's hard. But we're all doing that. And of course, we're also thinking about, okay, could we make a piece with the community on the web? Could we all get on this little Zoom format and come up with material and interpret it different ways? So I think one upside may be that we figure out different ways of communicating that will help us through these dark days. Yeah. That include art.
Well, and I think there's a lot of people doing that now. It's like, there's everybody, so many artists are streaming their content, doing live performances from their house or the living room or whatever.
Yeah.
I think, and what I'm really sensing is that art is going to get us through this thing, because we're all looking to the artist to make us feel better. Once it's all over, hopefully that they'll remember that. And
well, we hope we get a few habits going, huh?
Yes.
For instance, the kids. So we have a kids curriculum, and we have 87 classes a week for young people. Well, now we're putting it online, and we're getting people, all sorts of people, the sisters and brothers of the people who are taking it. And so the exposure may have some salutary impact. It may be the art in the schools that we lost. So I'd like to look at the bright side.
Yeah. Well, I think at this point, that's what we have to do. We just have to keep looking at the bright side. Well, I really appreciate your time. If for those people who are interested in checking out your school, your theater, your dance, can they just go to your website, the ODC website?
Yep, please do.
Yes, I encourage it.
And think that one day you will see us in the flesh.
Yes. Well, I guess I was going to say, do you have any shows coming up in LA? But who knows? I mean,
who knows? We had to cancel, of course, we had to cancel all of our spring touring, and we canceled our spring season, our premiere season. Oh, so this was good. Our season included a piece called Up for Air Decameron. And Decameron is the story that was written by Boccaccio in the 14th century about 10 young strangers who got together and fled Florence because of the plague. Yes. And so our piece was canceled about the plague because of the plague. But the setup for the Decameron is that they passed the time by telling stories to each other, erotic, exotic, funny, tales of love. So that's kind of what our piece is. It's the erotic, exotic tales of love. But we were supposed to present it in the spring. Yes, well, we didn't. So we now think we may present it in the summer, which may also not be possible. So we'll see. But we like to plan as if it was going to be possible.
Yes. Well, I think we're doing the same. We're planning, hoping that we've already canceled our big June fundraiser. Now we're looking at July with our fingers crossed, and I already have my finger on the delete button just in case.
Yeah, me too.
Well, thank you so much, Brenda. I certainly do appreciate it.
Well, it's fun talking to you, Chris, and let's hope.
Yes, fingers crossed.
Yeah, okay, take care.
You too.